Hi everyone, welcome to Crochet Rocks. My name's Tracy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make this scarf. Now it's got a nice little pattern to it. It's absolutely 100% suitable for beginners. Now this is an infinity scarf, but you don't have to make it as a continual round infinity scarf, but I've done that. My favourite scarf is an infinity scarf, and I wear it all the time, and it's just so easy just to put it on and cross it over, and then just, I've probably done it too much, pop it over. And then this one is kind of baggy, but I wanted it that way. But when you do your coat up, it's nice, but you can even put it round 3 times if you want. So this is how I've made it anyway, but it's very easy and suitable for the beginner. Now I've used this variegated yarn, and I will show you more about that in a second for this particular one, but I'm going to use a different one. I've kind of got it, that's it. I will use a different one for the tutorial because it might be a bit tougher to see with all these jazzy colours, but each strand, you see, has a double colour or a lurex thread going through it, so it makes it a little bit tricky to see the stitches. But what I really like about this is the way that I've done it. You cannot see a join, so I haven't made a scarf and then attached it and sewn it. It's a continual round, and you will not see a join at any point around. You can't see a join. There is absolutely no seam, no telltale chaining up that looks like a seam. There's nothing, just the pattern all the way around. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video while I sort that stuff all out and get cracking. So my first tutorial since having COVID, so it's a bit of a milestone, that's the word. So anyway, I'm going to get all my stuff together and I will see you in a sec. Okay, so I'm going to use this Caberet by Stylecraft. It's a DK weight. It's not overly thick for a DK, like a 3 weight, but it is classed as double knitting. And this is a beautiful yarn. It's got a lovely glitz, and this shade is 1095 Underwater Rainbow, which is just a beautiful collection of colours. So for this, I'm going to use a 4.5mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, and you need a darning needle as well. And this I'm making as an infinity scarf, but of course you don't have to. You can just make it as one long scarf, and any particular length that you wish. I'm just going to find the end while I'm talking. But this infinity scarf, I'm making 210 chain. The one that I made, that I showed you before, I did make that one longer, and that had a chain of excuse me, 240, because I wanted it to be much longer. But this one is going to be just 210 because I like them to be shorter. So this is suitable, as I said before, for the absolute beginner. I'm just moving my drink if you wonder what all that noise is. And you won't see the join at all. You won't see the seam in any way. Now, the only way that it's really visible is the fact that the yarn changes colour, but the yarn changes colour periodically anyway. It's a self-striping, so if you were to use just one colour to make this scarf, you wouldn't see any join at all. But that's the only thing that kind of betrays the join, is if the colour changes and there's a step because of it. But other than that, you won't, if it's just one colour or a yarn that changes colour very often, you won't see those at all. So I'm going to leave a nice long tail to join, because although this is an infinity scarf, I don't like to make a ring because it's very, very difficult to stop it from twisting when it is that length. So you can make this any length that you like, and you can use any yarn that you like. Just bear in mind you need to keep the length that you want, and you can easily measure that once you've got it around your neck. But for me, the perfect length with this 4.5mm crochet hook is 210 chain. Now this is done in multiples of 2. I'm doing the modern V-stitch, which is very, very easy for the beginner, and it also looks very nice anyway. You'll see once we get going. Now, one little tip: if you chain quite tightly, I would use a 5 or a 5.5 to do your foundation row of chains. Now I'm just going to make a slip knot, and you can do that anyhow that you normally do. And I'm going to show you briefly how to do a chain, because as I said, this is suitable for the beginner. So you yarn over. I'll show you how I was taught to do a slip knot, just in case you don't know. And that is to make a loop, and you just take your yarn around the back and put it through it and pull. Very simple. I'll show you one more time. Make a loop, take the yarn around the back and through, and just pull it, and you've made your slip knot. I'm going to keep that long tail, as I said, because I want to join. So I'm not going to use a larger crochet hook to do my chain, because I can judge the chain by making it loose anyway. So I'm just going to now do 210, and to do a chain we have our loop on our hook, we yarn over and just pull it through. So just yarn over and pull it through. Remember not to keep them too tight. Yarn over and pull it through. And if you do chain tightly, as I said before, just use a larger hook. Otherwise you might find it pulls. So yarn over and pull through. It's as simple as that. And we're going to do 210 of them. Now if you're using a larger size yarn and a larger needle, you will need less, but you can judge that just by chaining until you get to the length that you want. And I did mine, the first one I ever made, I just measured it up against one I'd already got from the shop, like I'd my favourite infinity scarf that I'd had for ages. So I'm going to pause the video, because there's nothing worse than counting when somebody else is counting and it just puts you off. So remember, it's yarn over and just pull it through. Simple. Yarn over and pull it through. Now I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see the stitches with this yarn, because the other one was quite bright and I don't think you'll see it, but I think this one may be okay. So I'm going to pause it now, and I'll come back to you when I have my 210 chain. Okay, so I have all my chain, and for the first row I'm not going to form the ring, as I said, because it has a tendency sometimes to twist, and that's not very helpful. So this loop on the hook here doesn't count as a stitch. We're going to count, and we're going to go into the 4th chain from the hook. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going into this one, and we're going to yarn over and go into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So we have 3 on our hook, and we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Now that is a UK treble crochet or a double crochet in the US, and I'm going to show you one more time. I'm going to go into exactly the same stitch, yarn over and go back into that same chain, yarn over and pull up a loop. So we'll have 3 on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So now I have this little loop at the end, which is going to be one UK treble by the time we get right to the end, and we've got 2 in the same stitch, which is the 4th one from the hook. So we're going to skip one chain. You can see the next chain there, and we're going to go into this one. So we're going to do another 2 in that chain there. So we're going to do exactly the same, 3 loops on the hook, pull through 2 and pull through 2. I'll show you one more time. Yarn over into the same stitch where we've just been in, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Caught my my bit of glitz there. So there you can see we have our bit at the end, our 2 stitches, a gap and our 2 stitches, and we're going to repeat that. We're going to just hold on to this so you can see. We're going to ignore the next chain, which is this one here, and we're going to go into that one, and we're going to do another 2 stitches in that one there. So we're going to do that all the way along. We're going to skip one and do 2 stitches in the next chain, and that's our repeat. We're going to skip the next one and go into that one, do 2 more stitches. Now don't worry if while you're doing it, it looks like it pulls this loop quite large. It does actually pull it back out again. It will sort of even up. Don't worry about that. So again, skip 1 and 2 in the next one. Now I caught that. It's because this yarn has that glitz, so it kind of splits a little bit if you're not careful, and I've got the camera in the way. So we're just going to do that all the way to the end, and I will pause the video and catch up with you when I get to the end, and I'll show you what to do at the end. But that's our repeat. Skip 1 and then 2, skip 1 and then 2, skip 1 and 2. So I'll catch up with you once I get to the end. Okay, so I'm all the way to the end, and now I just have 2 chain left. There's the one I'm going to skip, and I'm going to do 1 treble crochet, which is UK term, or double crochet US terms, in that very last stitch. So there's just going to be 1 in that stitch. Now I'm just going to loop that around my cup, and I need to get this, turn the work over and pull it all the way to the end, so I've got 2 ends and they're not twisted in any way. Just get my yarn away from it, tangling itself up in my yarn. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. So this is the right side of the work, so I'm using it like it's a huge loop, and I'm just running it through my fingers all the way along so that it's keeping it the right way up. There we go, almost to the end, and then turn this back on itself. So this is now a big loop. So there's my, there's my 2, there's my 2, and that's my end. So I'm going to just slip stitch into the top of, there's my first stitch. So the chain just before my first stitch, I'm going to slip stitch into there, and I've got my tail at the bottom, so I'm just going to go in and slip stitch to meet the join. See, now if you look, that is the only way that you would see that there was a join there, because I'm going to join this to that bottom, and this here is going to be my last V. So I'm going to pull that out into a big loop at the moment, and I'm just going to connect this up. So I'm going to do that by just turning it over briefly and going into that lowest one of my 2 chains, so the bottom of the 2 chain, and getting my tail and just pulling it through, and then I'm going to do a chain and cinch it down and pull it through. So when I pull my work up, there's my big loop, and now it's joined, and that becomes a stitch, a loop. So it a V stitch, it just becomes like a V. So let's get my yarn hook back in. So those 2 become a V. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slip stitch. Hang on, getting tangled up with my yarn. My tail's in the way. Lost my tail. Where are you? Here it is. Just bear with me a second. got it the wrong way around, that's why. There we go. So now tail at the bottom, yarn at the top, and these two become my V. So there's my next V here. I've just slip stitched into this stitch, and there is the first V. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, and slip stitch into there. So now I'm in that very first V, and I'm going to chain 2, and that's going to count as my first treble crochet. And I'm going to do another one right in between there in that V. So now I'm doing a V inside the bottom V. So there's my skipped one, and there's my next V. So I'm just going to do 2 stitches in that V, and we're going to do that all the way along. I'm going to do that in every single V. There's our skipped one, and there's our 2. And we're going to go in between those and just do 2 more. I'm going to do that in every single one all the way round until we meet back up at the start. And as I said, if it wasn't for the fact that this yarn changes colour in any way, you wouldn't see those joins at all. Be invisible. So I hope you followed that. You just make a long chain, and we do our first row, and then we make the loop then, so that our chain doesn't twist. If you're quite confident that you won't twist the chain, of course you can join the chain, but I find this much easier. I know it looks complicated, but it's not really. It just needs to keep your wits about you when you get back to the start, to go in between those 2 single ones that have joined together now to make a V, you know, the one at each end, which is now a V. And then once you've got subsequent rounds, you won't even notice that anymore. It's just the first one. So that's what we're doing. We're just going to go inside our 2 stitches, we go in between them and do 2 stitches. Now this is called the modern V-stitch, and I like it better than the old V-stitch. And the only difference is the old V-stitch would have had a chain in between, so it would have looked like this. See, it's more of a V. But because you're putting a stitch between it, you're creating that V space. But it's also a little bit more of a subtle V. So if you see what I mean, it's once you put your stitch in between, you're creating the V anyway. And it's not overly lacy, but I feel it's kind of nice and airy, but it's just perfect for a scarf. So I'm going to carry on doing this all the way round, and so I'm going to pause the video because it's a little bit boring watching me just going in between my 2 stitches and creating the V. So I'm going to catch up with you when I get right back to the start. Okay, so I've gone all the way around, and here's my first V. So I have 1 more to do. That's my space, and just between this join, which obviously I do need to tighten up, and I can do. So you can see it quite clearly because this one is the starting colour and this one was the end colour. So I just need to do a V in there, and I will tidy up that join. You can leave it if you want until the end and sew it in, but I just thought it'd be easier to seal it, and then you'd see. So now I've got my first V here of that row and my last. So now I just need to slip stitch into the top of these 2 chain, the first 2 chain. Let's move that tail out of the way. So there it is, that's the V, the 2 chain that started it all. So I'm just going to slip stitch, and you can do that by going into those 2 loops if you want to. Slip stitch into there, And then we're going to go into, this is our V, the green one here. We're going to go into our V and slip stitch, and then start again with our 2 chain, and then our second stitch into that V to create the first V. Let me just get some yarn, pull some yarn out, and that is how we join every single round. Once we get all the way back round again, we'll slip stitch into the top of this first of our 2 chain, which is our first stitch, and then we'll slip stitch into the actual V itself, so we're working into the V, and we'll do our second stitch, which is a normal treble crochet in the UK terms, or double, and then we'll just go in each one with our 2 stitches just as before, and go all the way around exactly the same as we have just done. And then once we get all the way back round again, we'll slip stitch into our top of our first 2 chain, and then slip stitch into the V itself, do our 2 chain, and that's how it grows. So you won't see any joins at all apart from colour changing, but then colours change all the way around, so even that you can't really see. But then you just keep going round after round until it measures your desired length. So I'm going to pause the video, and I will come back to you once I have enough of a width to my scarf, and I will show you how many rows I've done. Right, so here we are. I've done 20 rows, and that has given me a scarf of this width. Now I've done my 20 rows, and I've joined it with my slip stitch in the top of my 2 chain. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a slight border around it, and I'm not going to do very much, and all I want to do is kind of finish it off. So I'm just going to do 1 chain and cinch it down, because I don't really want to see that chain, and I'm going to just do 1 UK double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US in every single stitch around. So I'm going to go into my first stitch there, and then I'm going to go in between my V just to open that up, and then I'm going to go into my next stitch, and in between my V, and into the next stitch, and in between my V. I think I'm missing a stitch. Maybe I am. Yes, I think I am. I should have gone into that post. See, making mistakes. It's because it's getting late. Okay, so I've gone into my first stitch between my V, and then I need to go into this post here, and then into this stitch between my V. There should be 3 stitches, and there's my third. So I'm going to this stitch between my V and into this post, and it's just going to open those last V's up and give it a nice edge. And then I'm going to do that exactly the same on the bottom, but obviously we'll be going upside down, because you know that's we'll just be going into this stitch and into that one. So this will be the one that's in between at the bottom. I'm going to just go and do 1 all the way around. I'm not going to do like a wide border, it's just kind of finishing it off really. So I'm going to just do that now, go in every single one and all the between the V's, and I'll meet back up with you when I get all the way round to the start again. Okay, so I'm almost back. I've got there's my first one, so I've got my last V to go into, and go into that last stitch there, and then just slip stitch into the first stitch, get my hook in, just to meet up. Now if you wanted to, you could do more rows, so you'd have more of a border, but I just wanted to finish the edge off. I cinch that right down and pull it through, and then I've got to sew that in. And now I've got to do the same on the bottom edge, and you can join it the same place. Just drop my yarn, bear with me a second while I go find it. It's here somewhere. Okay, I can't find the end. I've got the yarn but no end, and I don't know which end the end is. I've got it, thank goodness for that. Right, here we go. So I'm going to join it at the same place as this. So that's just to, I'm going to put my yarn in, I'm going to leave a nice long tail, and I'm just going to use both ends, the working yarn and the tail end, do my first chain and just cinch it down. So then I'm just going to drop these, and I'm going to go in each of these, work over each of these ends, I mean. I'm just going to do the same thing in each one along, but I'm going to go in each stitch, but when it comes to this, this will be my gap, just like up the top was the center of my V, but I'm going to go in both of the other stitches and then just into the gap at the bottom of my V, and then go into both stitches. So you probably can't see with me working over the tail, but I'm going into each of my stitches all the way along the bottom. Let's move those tails out of the way now. So there you can see this is my bottom row of chain, and so you can see that this is how it works as a V. So my next stitch, I will just go into that V and then into the chain for the next two and get it in, and then into the gap for that space, and then into the next two. 1 and 2. I can't find it. It sometimes pulls a little tight. There we go, I've got in. And then just into the actual space itself. That one. And then that one. And then into the space. And that's all I'm going to do all the way along until I get right back to the start again. So I'm going to carry on in each stitch, and I will meet up with you when I get to this point here, and that's where I shall end off. So I will go in each one all the way along and come back to you when I get to the very end. So I've almost made it all the way to the end, and just a few more stitches left. But like I said to you, on the other side, if you wanted to, you could go and do more rounds. I just doing the one because I don't particularly want it to be too wide, so I'm going to leave a nice long tail again so that I can sew that in and really make it so it's not coming out. And that's it, that's all done. Now, I really love this yarn. It's just got such mystic colours. Just love it, so pretty. So that's it, that's my infinity scarf, and like I said, you can make it any yarn that you want. If you wanted to make it thicker, just remember to use the corresponding crochet hook, and you can just measure it to the size that you want. But that's the modern V-stitch, and it's very, very easy and more or less seamless depending on the yarn you use. I think the only reason that you can see this seam at all is because there is this colour change. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it wasn't too confusing at the beginning when you make that into a circle. But so thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.